Ethan Nash here reporting for TOTTnews, and I'm joined by Ciaron O'Reilly, who is a legendary activist here in this state, especially with his work in support of Julian Assange and Bradley Manning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, we've just learnt, we're just outside the exclusion zone here, and you've just learnt that you've been put on a prohibited persons list and won't be able to enter into the G20 facility. For some of our viewers at home, could you give a background of what's happened here today?
Yeah, I attended a workshop earlier to do with the Counter Summit, and then I came down here and was just sitting there holding the sign, and two uniformed police turned up, and G20 related police, and started asking me my name and particulars, and as they were doing that, I'd say within less than 2 minutes of them putting my name into a computer laptop, an unmarked police car pulled up behind them, and two detectives got out, and the uniformed guys weren't aware of them, and so once the uniformed guys finished with me, the detectives then served me with a banning order saying I'm a prohibited person.
Wow. Do you know why this may have been? Do you have any suspicion?
The police claim they don't know why. I suspect it's to do with my history of non-violent civil disobedience, or my recent stated intentions to non-violently confront President Obama about the ongoing persecution of Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden. But these are all politically driven persecutions, if that's the case, So yeah, I mean, I find the whole environment here I was quite frightened to come down here today, and I've done 2 years in jail. I've got a lot of history living in dangerous places, but it's a real manufactured fear of, helicopters and cops everywhere, and that shouldn't be sacrificed by any society, for this kind of G20 circus.
Yeah, well, you mentioned political persecution, and we spoke off air just before. The letters that I just read that says that, we suspect you of blah, 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 we'll put you on a prohibited persons list. And I said to you, what's that to stop them from doing that for all people? You know what I mean? Yeah. Just based on their beliefs. Do you think this is a dangerous thing?
Yeah, I think any acceptance of this environment is dangerous. It's like the old boiling frog theory. You throw a frog into boiling water and it'll jump out, but if you put it in and slowly heat it up, and people are getting used to sacrificing their rights and their civil rights, and people should be to stage this 2-day meeting with some pretty evil people, coming. You've got, the Saudi Arabians who gave Islamic State the start-up money, and you've got Turkey who let all the jihadists through, and who the Australian forces are fighting at the moment. So they're here. There's lots of different reasons to be outraged by the world leaders who are assembled here, and it's basic democratic procedure to allow people to articulate their position. And if they act illegally, or you think they act illegally, arrest them and charge them. Yep. But it's kind of a minority report, before you do anything, they've punished you or whatever.
Definitely. Now, in terms of speaking out in opposition relating to the G20 leaders, you've obviously campaigned for many years. Could you share with some of the viewers some of the work you've been doing in relation to Julian Assange and Bradley Manning over the world?
Yeah, I mean, my work originally began in the 70s here when they banned street marches and civil liberties. And there was a direct relationship between the banning of those civil liberties and how corrupt the government was. And that there was a definite marriage between those two realities. And so, I'm primarily an anti-war activist, and I disabled a B-52 bomber with a group of other people in New York State on the eve of the first Gulf War. And this is a 23-year war against the people of Iraq. I mean, the last US president not to bomb Iraq was Ronald Reagan, and Obama is now continuing this. And so I served 13 months in jail in the States before being deported back here. And in this war in 2003, at this phase of the war, we were able to disable a US warplane at Shannon Airport in Ireland. So most US troops going to Iraq went through Ireland. And so, at that stage, Chelsea Manning's only 12 or 13 years of age and is opposed to the war. He's living in Wales at that stage with his mother. And then later he exposes the nature of this war, the barbarity of the war, and that's why he's doing 35 years in jail. Now, all we're asked to do to support war in this age is to avert our gaze, turn the other way. And if Chelsea Manning had averted gaze in Baghdad, wouldn't be in jail now, you know. So these are heroic people of our time, of our generation, and we owe it to them to speak up and remember them and speak out for them, and to confront the people persecuting them, like Barack Obama and David Cameron, who are here in Brisbane this week.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I wanted, speaking on the Middle East, I just wanted to get your quick thoughts on the current developments that are happening over there, how you see the current expansion of supposed Islamic State and whether they could fester into Syria. What is your take at the moment on the geopolitical situation, and what are some of the motives maybe behind
I think, like my mother had 3 uncles who went through Gallipoli Barracks. Well, it wasn't called Gallipoli Barracks then, but through an Agra army camp to World War I, you know, to Gallipoli into France. And that was the Ottoman Empire, you know, that was the last caliphate. That's 100 years ago. And, you know, Iraq and all these countries, Syria and Lebanon, were all created by the British and the French after that war. And the issues of peace and justice have never been addressed there. And, you know, who the United States is aligned to is these totalitarian Sunni royal families that control Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. And there's nothing democratic about them, nothing, you know. They behead people every Friday in Saudi Arabia for things like alcohol smuggling, you know. So the Taliban and Islamic State, they share the same theology and the same ideology as Saudi Arabia. That's where they got their startup money, and the Turkish government let them through, you know. So you've got a war, a sectarian war that is escalating and expanding across the Middle East. And of course it'll play itself out in small ways here in Australia between those communities too.
And something that is playing out in Australia, obviously due to this conflict or this expansion of ideologies, there is the erosion of our civil liberties back here at home. I just wanted to know if you had any thought on journalists and whistleblowers potentially being jailed for 10 years for revealing SIOs in this country.
This started with the attack on New York and the war on terror. And I remember seeing a poster outside the Ecuadorian embassy in London where Julian is. It said, you know, if wars are started by lies, and they are, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that didn't exist, the Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam, maybe telling the truth could stop war, you know. Yeah. And this persecution of whistleblowers is like the government wants no transparency. And so we have a government without transparency, and now we have individual lives, now we know through Edward Snowden, with no privacy. It's fucking amazing, you know. Like, there should be transparency for government and privacy for individuals. And it's just flipped on its head. So, yeah, and I think if you march against the war, and millions did in 2003, when you march against war, you incite people to resist it, and then I think you're morally obligated to accompany them through court and through jail till they get out. And I think the anti-war movement really failed to do that, not only with Manning and Assange, but with a lot of soldiers who refused to fight, you know. So hopefully we can learn some lessons.